Just wait for Dave to sit down, and then we'll start. Right, so welcome everybody. Fire drill is not expected, so if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building quickly and calmly. Please use the stairs if you're not using this. Once outside the building, please gather on the other side, the Yorkshire Bank on the opposite side of the road. Exit the door by which the door we went to the room, or by fire exits which clearly indicated by the standard green fire signs. Need any assistance in evacuating the building, please make yourself known to a member of staff. Please also make sure your mobile phones are turned off or set to silent. And this meeting will be recorded for future broadcast. So, apologies. Apologies are...
Yes, apologies from Councillor Goldby, substitute Councillor Wilson. Apologies from Councillor J. Sargent, substitute Councillor Smith. Apologies from Councillor Estarity, substitute Councillor London.
Okay, anybody any news on
Councillor Wilson's on his way, literally on his way over now, and Councillor Brynny Edwards on she's got help in traffic, which is 3 minutes away.
Anybody know anything about Borough London? No? So, no. Okay. Minutes from the last meeting. Is everybody happy that I've signed them off? I know we voted against it, so yeah. Public consultation that we received. Item 6, Warwickshire Police and Crime Commissioner. So, if I can hand over to Philip.
Well, good evening everybody, and thank you for the invitation. It's important that I go to all parts of the county, which Nuneaton is one of the most important, so it's a pleasure to be here. What I thought I'd do is just give you a brief overview about updating the plan, which I've been asked to do. Just give you some sort of headlines on the budget, which I agreed on Monday, and then perhaps take questions from any members if they wish to do that. So, the plan, it's in the agenda, which is helpful. Obviously, our first priority is about victims and survivors. We have continued to fund third sector organisations and charities to the tune of about £2.25 million each year, which helps them work with the police, and anyone who gets any money from us, it has to be in accordance with our plan and has to contribute to the overall strategy of the force. This year we are now beginning to commission services. In my predecessor in the first couple of years, I've given annual grants to these organisations. Now to some of the bigger ones, we are commissioning 3 to 5 year contracts. So that includes Bernardo's, that includes victim support, and some of the women's refugees and women's charities to do with counselling and advice on domestic violence and other such crimes. So that gives the organisation itself a bit more resilience. Plainly, if you only get an annual grant, they all employ people, they don't know whether they're going to get money the next year, etc. So all of them have been delighted. We had a pretty tough sort of evaluation on all of the applications. Some were successful, some weren't, and they have to prove to us they're going to contribute to a great extent to what we're trying to do with our victims strategy. And that victims strategy is now it's in operation. It's been signed up to by all the agencies throughout Warwickshire, including the Health Service, Mental Health Trust and others, to make sure that there is the focus on the victim. And that was my principle. That's what I wanted to do this job, was to put the victim first. So that is in train and moving forward. The ensuring efficient and effective policing is about making sure we have plenty of officers, that they are properly equipped, that the buildings they work in, the cars they drive, and the body-worn videos and the mobile phones and everything else are up to date and efficient, that the the new recruit comes into a force that is really well equipped and is keen to get on and feels that there is support from the Chief Constable and my office to give them everything they need to do the job. The last 2 points are really protection and prevention and reducing of crime. That is also 2 important parts of the plan, and we have, as you well know, we have safer neighbourhood teams. We have 32 across Warwickshire, of which the North has its, and even Bedworth has its fair share, and they are now principally involved in problem solving. Problem solving is working with partners, and as part of the world it's definitely Nuneaton Bedworth Borough Council and other partners to try and stop some of the crimes or the reoffending or all sorts of things, or the antisocial behaviour, whatever it is going on in a particular area. So as councillors, you all need to know who your, I'm sure you do, who your SNT officers and PCSOs are. They are the ones to talk to about problems in your wards. So, and we're trying to make that easier so that you're part of the partnership to investigate and try and see what we can do with other, not just the police who tend to respond as the last resort, but other partners who can help sort of try and some dialogue and trying to sort out problems happening in the first place. So that's those 2. The prevention agenda is about, we fund quite a lot of prevention and crime advisors who will go around to individuals or businesses and give them advice on how they can protect themselves and prevent crime happening to them. And that is something that we need to do. I always argue the NHS should do more of this, trying to stop diseases and illness in the first place. And that's what we're trying to do, to reduce the demand on the force by helping individuals and businesses and communities to protect themselves. I think that's probably just an overview of the plan. I mean, we update it each year. We report back. It's all on our website. We like to be held to account on how we are doing against it. And I'm very happy to ask. It's 20-odd pages. If anybody's got any questions. The most important thing at the moment, and the last couple of weeks, has been preparing and agreeing the budget. And I'm sure you're aware, we have gone to the maximum permitted, evening Chris, maximum permitted under Home Office and Treasury rules. That's £24 onto a Band D property, 50 pence a week, which is not a lot of money. I'm well aware that those on fixed incomes, pensioners and others, is not particularly welcome news, but I've had to take the decision to make all of us safer. This is the way, this is the only option I have in collecting council tax. We did get a slightly increased grant from the Home Office. We've also had a 3.7% average across the county increase in the number of houses being occupied and paying council tax. That helps us, as it helps Nuneaton Bedworth. We call it the council tax base, and that helps as well. And we've had a little bit more money from the Ministry of Justice. So the total budget is about 110 million to run Warwickshire Police. We have an income of about 8 million a year, and that is on various vettings and other parts of the income and lettings of some of the properties we've got tenants and things. So that is useful. So we needed to find about 102 million in total. Roughly now we get half from the government and half from the council tax. As by way of comparison, West Midlands get 18% from council tax, and whatever it is, 82% from the government. So I think that probably shows you we think the funding is not fair. It's skewed towards the urban areas against the smaller rural forces. So that is something I take up every time I see the Minister of Policing. I'm always asking what he's doing about it. Up here I talk to Marcus Jones, he's up in London, as to how we can change and get a fairer funding formula. And I think this is going on in local government as well. It looks to be slightly into the long grass, but we want to make sure that it isn't lost, because I think Warwickshire would be net winners out of it. The extra money, that £24, gives, in cash terms, gives Warwickshire Police another 6 million to spend. About 1.5 million of that will be taken up by police officer pay rises and staff pay rises, which are on a national scale, and we have a bit of a strain on police pensions, officer pensions, not staff pensions. And it's about a 2.2 million strain on Warwickshire, a lot more on the bigger forces. And we've had from the government 1.9 million to go towards that, so most of that is covered by the general taxation. But it's something that we'll keep on going forwards. Actuaries come in and look at pension pots and they decide they're underfunded or they're overfunded or whatever it is. So our staff are actually with the Warwickshire County Council Pension Fund, which I think probably your staff are as well, which is well funded. And we are not anticipating a shortfall or a big capital injection into that, which is good. As far as the benefits of the remaining 4.5 million, that enables me to give the money to the Chief Constable to recruit a further 85 police officers, a further 5 PCSOs, and a further 10 investigators, detectives, and you'll be aware nationally there is a shortage of detectives across all forces. But interestingly, I was at a recruit course the other day, and about a quarter of them wanted to join the police to become detectives. So that's good news, because it's nice for people to end up doing the career and the part of that career that they want to do. So that's encouraging. Of the 85 officers, 40 extra officers will go into patrol, which is the 999 response. That will be shared fairly around Warwickshire. I'm waiting for the Chief Constable to tell me exactly where they're going to go. It's not my decision where they go, it's his. But obviously I will be keen to see that Nuneaton gets at least its fair share of those 40 officers, as indeed Bedworth. They will remain response police stations, if you like, patrol stations, where there will be 24/7 cover for the 999s. There will be 5 officers and there will be 5 PCSOs going to strengthen our safer neighbourhood teams, and there are some that are stronger than others, so that will begin to bring them all. And this is obviously for the next 12 months. I personally would like to see more safer neighbourhood teams and stronger safer neighbourhood teams, because they are the backbone of local policing. We're going to create a new rural crime team for the county, and that will centralise. You'll all have heard of Carol Cottrell, our wildlife officers, our gypsy liaison officer, and all that expertise that is rather dispersed at the moment will come into one team to be able to act on behalf of our rural community, where many of the vulnerable members of our society live. Obviously, geographically, many are isolated, and there's quite a big proportion of the elderly living out in the countryside. So, really pleased about that. I think Warwickshire did have a rural crime team, but some years ago now. So that is something that the NFU, who contact me regularly, are delighted with, and pretty well every farmer in Warwickshire is a member. So that's good news. I don't think it's necessarily to the detriment of the urban areas. They're looking for the same organised crime gangs. They're looking for, they'll be working closely with all the response teams and all the SNTs around the county. But I think that is a good move forward. There'll also be quite a lot of other specialist officers, additional specialist officers being created. To give you an idea, as you know, we have our harm hub at the sort of centre of the force. We're having another inspector, 2 adult in need coordinators, and 3 domestic abuse risk managers. There will be an investment of additional detective sergeant and 4 officers into the child sexual exploitation unit. There'll be an additional investment of 8 officers into the offender management unit. They're very much involved with serious and organised crime, and looking at some of the things that you suffer from, like car key burglaries and burglary and vehicle crime. And we want more operations, we want more resources put into that, which residents tell me they are either victims of or they have a fear of being a victim. We're going to mainstream, in other words, at the moment we have temporary police staff investigators on contracts. We want them to be mainstreamed into the budget. So that's another 10 of those. So the total that we will be getting, of course it's somewhere, is 85 officers, 5 PCSOs, and 10 police staff investigators. That's a total of 100. That will take the establishment of Warwickshire up to 976 police officers. How does that compare with what we have been at the peak? Warwickshire in 2008 had just over 1,000, and since that time it's dwindled a bit. But over the last year or two, we're beginning to climb up. Our current strength is here we go, is 790. So we've got 200 officers to recruit within the next 15 months by the end of the next financial year. We have 1,000 officers in the pipeline, and I'm told the normal attrition rate is about 20% of those who initially apply get through to actually putting on the boots and getting out on the ground and are trained. So the numbers are there. We've put quite a lot of resource now into training the officers. More trainers have come in. They're all now being trained as Warwickshire. By the way, I'm happy to talk about the Alliance and all that if you wish as well. But now we're training our own officers with our own trainers, and we can take control of it a lot more. But it is quite an ask, quite a challenge to provide another 200 officers. But you won't be surprised to hear that the Police and Crime Panel have said they're happy to agree to the extra £24, but they want to see the results of the payments made by our residents at the end of the time. So pressure's on a bit there, but I think it's right. I think it'll be very good for visibility. How many times am I told I haven't seen a policeman for the last 3 months, or a PCSO? I think it'll be good, obviously, for response times, for investigation, and being able to deal with some of those crimes that perhaps at the moment take longer than we would all like to investigate and get people into court. So it is good news for us all. Plainly, I'd prefer it came from central government, but that's not something I personally can control. So we're confident that we're going to have the resources to move forward. We have an expanding population, as you know. We're about 500,000. We're due to be nearly 600,000 by 2030, and those extra residents and communities are going to need better protection. So all the while we're looking to deploy patrol bases to further places where we're looking to always reassess the safer neighbourhood structure, to get that closer to the communities and more restrictive. Perhaps a little bit of a word about the Alliance. I don't know whether you've been reading the papers and what have you. Last October, on the 8th of October, the Chief Constable and I received a unilateral termination of the Alliance with West Mercia. And just so you understand, at the moment 97% of the money I collect goes into the Alliance. So although we were two forces, we were very much one operation, being funded by pretty well all the money I had. So that's been terminated within 12 months, which I think is completely unrealistic. To split up a £300 million business in under 12 months is pretty well impossible. But that's where we're at. So we're currently negotiating. We are looking at various options, one of which would be Warwickshire as a standalone force again. Secondly, we'll be doing some collaboration with West Mercia. We're also looking at collaborating with other organisations. I mean, for example, human resources accounts doesn't have to be with another police force. So we're looking at some of our partners to see whether we can collaborate there. And of course, the other option is a combination of all of those. So we're looking at what we can do. We're looking at the costings. We have no more money, although we're quite well off with the reserves. But we have no more income to be able to spend too much money. A member of the Police and Crime Panel said you must have been handed a poison chalice when you took on this job, and I actually don't believe that. I think this is an opportunity to rebuild Warwickshire Police, and it's an opportunity to look at what we do well, what we do efficiently, what we don't do quite so efficiently, and to arrive at the end of this in a year or so's time with a better structure and a more responsive force. So there will be some challenges, plainly. We have to come out of some of the things we have to do it on our own. Some of those high-end activities in what we call protective services, like forensics and firearms and that sort of thing, we may have to look very carefully to make sure that we're resilient in Warwickshire. But I've had quite a lot of letters and emails from Nuneaton telling me, why are we cutting our safer neighbourhood teams by half, why are we doing this, that and the other, and we're just not doing that. Local policing, which includes safer neighbourhood teams, the patrol and response teams, the CID and our roads policing, is actually going to stay exactly as it was. and will be enhanced by the extra officers. So it's just not true that that split or the alliance is going to be detrimental to our residents. It absolutely is not, and I've been saying that loud and wide since October, because really at the moment the local policing is kind of commanded locally. We have an ACC who's in charge of local policing. Inspector Dave Williams beside me, very much involved with it. There's no plan to change that at all, and indeed we want to improve it. So there we go. I've been going for a few minutes. Is that enough to set the scene? But I'm very happy to take any questions. Introduce Dave Williams, who you may know is Inspector in his neck of the woods. If there's anything question I get that's very operational that I don't have my full handle on, obviously we can ask him to help us out.
Right, okay, thank you for that. Right, over to panel. Any questions? Lydia?
You say your grant has been cut from central government and therefore there's an increase in the council tax to fund this. So basically the council taxpayer is paying twice, through their taxes and through the council tax. Is that what you're saying?
I didn't say our funding had been cut from central government, but it hasn't been increased by anything amount. There are some small legacy grants. We've got a little bit more money to help with pensions. In effect, I suppose, if you took inflation into account, it's probably stands still. Quite a lot of the government money goes into the Police Transformation Board and other specific schemes which we bid for, so we can get a bit more, but it's just not guaranteed, so we can't put it into the budget. All I would say about this, and I think it's important, is that 50-odd million that we get from our council taxpayers, I can promise you, will all be spent in Warwickshire. Now, when I pay my tax, and I had to do that by the end of January, I suspect not much of that will be spent in Warwickshire, but at least the council tax will be spent locally.
But it does still stand that people are paying it twice. They're paying it through their taxes and through their council tax. How does that compare historically, the increase you've had to make?
Historically, Warwickshire is one of the highest percentages of council tax in total overall police funding because of the way we're structured, and we're actually the smallest force in the country apart from the City of London. When I took over, I don't know before, when I took over we were fairly close, above 45% of the total was council tax funding. But don't forget that the general taxation we pay goes to fund the NHS, and lots of other things as well. It doesn't all go to police.
No, I realise that, but it is still a double whammy. However you dress it up, it is. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Walmsley.
Thank you. I'll just start. Councillor, you might have to work with the colleagues in the West Midlands who get, far more of a grant from central government than we did. We balance this out a little bit. But I just wanted to point to Chair. I think it's a very fair comment to make. One thing I'm very grateful for that presentation. I know you said that over the next sort of 15 months or so, we've got another roughly 200 officers coming online. And I know that you're saying about levels now versus historic, but what does it actually mean? Because I remember you coming to before and talking about technological transformations, which mean actually officers spending more time out on the beats than they would have been previously. So what actually, have you got a comparison of maybe man hours, for example, and how those are physical out? We
estimate that the equipping of every officer with a mobile and a laptop, it gives an improvement of about 20% in officers' time not spent travelling backwards and forwards to a station. Now, we're trying to get that down to a more exact figure, but it's something around that. So an individual officer will have 20% more time now, out on the ground, out investigating or patrolling, whatever they're doing, to be able to become a bit more efficient.
And I know you touched on it, and this is probably more an operational point. The keyless car entry particularly is one that I think all councillors hear an awful lot of, because it's probably one of the more visible crimes. A big car on the drive and suddenly it's not there. It's pretty obvious. What success will we be having with that, and particularly we know it's organised criminality mostly behind it, and what success will we be having with those not only doing the physical stealing of the cars, but perhaps those further and higher up within the organised criminality that are instructing them?
I think we certainly have had a spike in that crime category really in the last 2 years. And I think that unfortunately, when you've got the Chinese that are building these relay systems and selling them on online for probably about £1,000, so these organised crime groups will buy them because they'll make that back in the day. I think we tried to stem it certainly by working in partnership with, for example, Neighbourhood Watch. So a lot of the volunteer funding, etc. You've got Neighbourhood Watches buying these pouches that will stop the signal of that relay system. So there's a lot of that been going on. Certainly I know in Nuneaton and Bedworth, a lot of community have bought those. In fact, you can actually put your keys in a tin. As long as it's in something metal, it will stop that signal. We've had some good successes now because obviously these offenders have been going up to the houses with the relay system and it's not happening for them. Unfortunately, the side effect of that, so once we get good at crime prevention in that aspect, you then get a problem where the offenders have to be, again, one step ahead. And we have had scenarios recently where, particularly again from offenders that are coming across the borders from West Midlands, they're actually just forcing their way into houses now, unfortunately, or doing where they're threatening the owner of the vehicle on a driveway or on a car park, etc. So, unfortunately, once we get a tactic to prevent that type of offence, they then move to a different MO, modus operandi, to steal. So we're always really playing catch up. Now, in terms of catching the people who are at the high end, it's very, very difficult for us locally or even as a force to try and tap into them because those individuals, for want of a better phrase, they don't get their hands dirty. So they will organise people underneath them to go out and do the dirty work on their behalf. And when we catch offenders, and we've caught quite a few these last few months, I don't know if you see all the social media updates that we've been putting out. Unfortunately, Mr. Second won't be too impressed, but we've written off about 6 police cars in the last few months by unfortunately being involved in quite dangerous pursuits with these offenders because they won't stop for anybody. So we've had some really good success there. We're working very, very closely with the Serious Organised Crime Unit and Regional Organised Crime Unit, so the SOCU and ROCU. And we're also working really closely with the National Crime Agency. It's really SOCU, ROCU and the National Crime Agency that deal with the bigger boys, if you like. Now, they will communicate to Warwickshire as a force, but they won't tell us everything that they're doing. So really, it's our job to work with West Midlands Police, Staffordshire Police, Northants, Leicestershire, those forces that are surrounding us as an area. I mean, I for one, came back from a meeting last week where I was sat around the table with Staffordshire and West Midlands police officers. We're going to be trying to run a cross-border operation end of February into March. We ran one in December, really successful, just after Christmas. So we're doing everything we can, and as Mr. Seckham said, if we can get these new officers coming through in the next 15 months, we can plug gaps that we've got and become actually more proactive. Because, in the last couple of years, when we've been down to sort of the high 700s, it's very, very difficult when you're competing with the demand that we've got. And Nuneaton and Bedworth, trust me, in terms of policing, is very, very demanding. It's a busy area. I've policed it for years. We end up firefighting, and with those officers that are going to come in over the next 15 months, it's brilliant because when we get them in, we've actually got enough to tackle the demand that's coming in and be proactive as well. And you need both to get good performance results. So we're finding now that West Midlands Police are coming to speak to us, Staffordshire Police, because they recognise that the offenders are actually crossing borders. Most of our offenders are West Midlands offenders from Birmingham and Coventry. So it's difficult, but we're getting some good results, to be fair, and that partnership working is really important, particularly for us with Neighbourhood Watch.
Can I just make a comment? When I came into this job 2.5 years ago, having run a business myself where I was always trying to sell myself and the business, and the good news, the police actually not good at putting out good news. And those that aren't victims of crime have a fear of crime. And if some of this good news could get out better and quicker and more accurately and targeted to the right people, I think that will help reduce the fear of crime amongst some of our most vulnerable people.
Councillor Condon, I don't know what you're doing with that, but you know how to indicate if you want to speak. Don't try and turn this into your circus, because I won't take it. I won't take it in here, I won't take it in the chamber. If you now want to indicate to speak, then you know how to do it. Councillor Brown, you're next because you indicated properly.
Thank you, Chair. The increase in precept that you've talked about, I presume it has to go before some sort of panel.
Yep.
And was there cross-party support?
Unanimous, cross-party.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott, you indicated.
Thank you. I've got two questions. Just looking on page 10 in our book about the alliance, which I know looks like it's coming to an end.
Yeah.
But the second paragraph on the second column
Hang on.
says...
It's on page 10 of my plan, is that right? Yes. Yeah.
says that it's unlikely that Warwickshire... just wait for the talking that always happens to stop. It's very distracting. So when they're finished talking
Just
and laughing...
can draw.
Okay. Sorry, it says it's unlikely that Warwickshire Police would have been able to make the scale of savings necessary acting independently. I think one of your options was going forward that we may become independent. So just worried about precepts going higher, and how would you manage to keep costs down without being...
Okay, that's a good question.
and there's another question.
Okay, so I do that one first. It is thought that since the alliance started, which was in 2012, which was nearly 7 years ago now, a total of about 35 million has been saved for both forces. We're about a third of the total, so probably it's saved Warwickshire about 10 million. But I think it's fair to say that most of those savings were made at the beginning when we first went into the alliance, because it basically teams were combined and it reduced a lot of staff. 80% of the costs I have are in people. I don't believe that those sorts of savings have been made over the last couple of years. So what will be a challenge though, for example, let's look at human resources, HR. You need a team to do HR, and at the moment they are looking after two forces, but and we pay a third of the cost. I suspect it costs us a bit more than a third of the cost we're paying at the moment to have our own HR team were we to do that. But each and every service, and we have 42 services, we're going to be looking, can we do them better on our own or in collaboration with somebody else? So what I've said on the budget is plainly, because this happens in October, I'm not absolutely sure what shape we're going to be in after October, what we're going to be doing on our own or with anybody else. So we've just had to budget that the costs of all those services and police officer pay and everything else will be the same for the second 6 months of the year as it will be for the first 6 months. So it's a good point, but my view is that the bulk of the savings were made at the beginning of the alliance. And what we've done since October is we've got a team who are working on what it costs us actually to do everything, each and individual part of the force, what it would now cost to do it on our own, and then we're talking to other organisations to see if we can collaborate with them.
The second question is about the 40 new patrol officers that are going to be distributed equally across Warwickshire. I'd like an update on where they've gone when it's been decided, bearing in mind that Nuneaton and Bedworth is a very demanding area crime-wise. Just wondering whether the equality would be geographical or crime-driven.
Well, it'll be both. So, Chief Constable permanently, when deploying any assets anywhere, has to think where's the threat, risk, and harm to the residents and communities. Nuneaton, Bedworth is part of North Warwickshire. Quite a lot more assets come to the north than they do to the south, where I come from. And I'm sure that I'm waiting to hear from the Chief Constable, but I'm pretty sure a good number of those patrol officers will end up in the north of the county.
And could we have an update when it
Yeah, when I know, I'll try and let you know. You can make a note to ask us.
I've got another straight career, and then
Thank you, Chair. In your report, you have mentioned about the justice centres. In Nuneaton, no criminal work is being done anymore. It's non-police, bit of family and TV licensing. It's a PFI building. What is the future?
It isn't a PFI building.
Not
We
anymore.
virtually fully paid for it. Yes, it was never. We have no PFI buildings at all. Some police forces do.
Right.
The position with the two justice centres is all other PCCs are really jealous of us having them because we have good buildings, one in Nuneaton, one in Leamington. They're in good order. All the partners who occupy the building, like the probation and the courts and everything, will pay a proportion of the maintenance. So we get a really good. I actually own the building and I'm the landlord in effect. But there's a board that manages the two. But I think it's a good deal. The first point you raised, I particularly picked up on. It is crazy that a witness or a victim from Polesworth on a criminal case has to go to Leamington. I fully get, and likewise someone from Shipston, where I live, getting divorced has to go to Nuneaton. It's crazy. So we are trying to put pressure on the Her Majesty's Court Service to bring Nuneaton back into having some. Are you a magistrate? Yeah, I thought it might be. We're trying to put pressure on it. It's not our decision, but to use those courts properly. They are modern courts. We have the ability for witnesses to give evidence away from the site. But we've got all the technology to be able to do that. And it is crazy, and we obviously have the two custody suites as well, one in each. So I'm determined to keep the pressure on the court service to get money back as it should be.
Good. Thank you.
Excuse me. You're probably aware that we've had quite a few problems over the last couple of months with travellers, gypsies. Do you have any plans to tackle the increase in this problem that we have for illegal traveller camps?
Yeah, I mean, I get a wealth of correspondence whenever there's a new unauthorised encampment. By the way, this is Dave Thompson, Dave Patterson from our office, who can.
Yeah, apologies for being late. It's circumstances beyond my control, but please be
Good
here.
to see you. So, lost my train. We gypsies and travellers. I get a lot of correspondence. I'm aware it's of great significance to any resident or community that gets an unauthorised campment, or a school, or a car park, or a leisure centre, or whatever it is. So, what we've done about it is we've produced, a bit like the victims, we've just produced a sort of protocol which gives some process as to how the various organisations, county council, districts and boroughs, police force and others can work together to move them on quicker. We have in the force, which not many forces have, if any, we have a gypsy liaison police officer who knows all these people, who can shake hands. You probably remember in Cromer in Norfolk there was a huge riot, and that was because I believe the police did not try and engage with the gypsy traveller community, and they ended up with a confrontation, and all the shops windows were smashed and there was no end of it to do. So it's about managing these things. But interestingly, today the Home Secretary has launched a consultation on what we all think, and I will certainly be responding, as to whether an unauthorised encampment is a trespass or a criminal act. At the moment it's a trespass, which is a civilian act, which is why the districts and boroughs have to spend so much money on preparing orders and serving notices and things. So if that happens and it becomes a criminal act, the police will be able to move them straight on. And I think it will become more uncomfortable for the community, the travelling community, to be able to operate on public or private land. I always say when talking about gypsies and travellers that they have a right to exist. They're a bit like the rest of the community. There are some good and bad ones. But the bad ones do give them a poor reputation, and are probably the ones that don't look after their animals and leave a load of mess and cause antisocial behaviour or crime indeed in an area. But I think we need to be quite careful that they've had a way of life. They've been around for 1,000 years. The Nazi regime, you'll well know, exterminated 6 million Jews. They exterminated an enormous number, hundreds of thousands of gypsy traveller and rover communities. So that's why I believe they're protected since World War II under the Human Rights Act. Having said that, it is not right that they come into our communities and flout the law, leave a mess and cause antisocial behaviour. So there's a balance here. It's part talking, it's part having the threat, if you like, of being able to move them on quickly. And I don't think they're going to go away. You'll be aware the Kenilworth Horse Fair in the middle of Warwickshire attracts thousands of gypsies and travellers every year, 3 times a year. That's a significant task and labour intensive and for the force. And we just have to manage it. We have to manage it. But I know the force, you may need to say something, Dave, because you've had more than your fair share up here. Rugby Borough, I don't know whether you know this, have obtained an injunction. They've been to court and obtained an injunction about unauthorised encampments on public land, enabling the local authority and the police force to move them on quicker. And interestingly, at Christmas, in my part of the world, we had a huge amount, and Warwick, we had a huge amount of encampments. Christmas, New Year, they were dispersed. They drove through Rugby, and they came up to Nuneaton and Bedworth, and you had all the problems up here. So maybe there's a lesson to be learned there. And finally, we've got another meeting or summit, whatever you like to call it, of all the agencies in Warwickshire, again, coming up, where we would be exploring how that injunction was obtained, should other districts and boroughs seek to do that as well, and to keep the working together going forward.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I will draw members' attention to my declaration of interest in that I do work in your building, in the Justice Centre. It is a decision, and I'm not going to comment on it because I have my own personal view, but it is the department's view that crime is better centralised in Leamington and Coventry, and family is more dealt with at Nuneaton, because, to be fair, preponderance of most family cases in Warwickshire tends to be the north of the county, so it makes more sense to put them there. That is a decision way above my pay scale, but that's HMCTS and not within your control. I was actually interested, and I made a note here about the Traveller Powers consultation having it come out today, so I'm pleased to hear that you will be responding to that consultation. And would it be possible for a copy of your response to be distributed to all the districts?
I think Neil is sending it out to all our partners, which will include
It would be interesting to see that, Chair.
Because I think you all need to respond together and individually.
I would be interested to know, because you mentioned about the rugby injunction, have you had any instances where you've had to enforce that injunction with the police powers, and how did that go? I don't know whether they have. I've heard anecdotally they may have been, but I don't know whether that's true or not.
There's been a couple of encampments in the last couple of weeks in Rugby, but the first encampment that moved on, they recognised they were on the land that, I mean, it's supposed to be borough-wide injunction, but having spoken to my counterpart, the Rugby Safe Neighbourhood Inspector, there was some uncertainty. The first encampment moved on within a matter of hours, so that wasn't an issue. But the second encampment unfortunately went on to some private land, and there was a bit of an issue over that, because, you know, I know even Martin Rowe Clark, our Gypsy Traveller Liaison Officer, who's based in the Justice Centre here at Nuneaton, you know, when we talked about whether the Nuneaton Borough Council would go the same way as Rugby, because one thing he was quite surprised at was that when that went to court, it wasn't contested, and it's quite surprised that even the travelling community didn't contest it, because they actually use barristers, the travelling community. They are well versed in all of the legislation, I can assure you. They know the score, they know how it works. As soon as we attend a lawful encampment, they ask us a load of questions, so they know. The second rugby one, it's now left, because again the police have attended with a council, served a notice on the injunction that's currently in place, and they moved on. There was no issue.
So you had no issues with enforcing the power of arrest attached to the injunction?
Not that I'm aware of. But that said, rugby's not my area.
Yeah,
but I wasn't made aware of any issues.
Because it's interesting to hear that, Chair, because the now former portfolio holder actually turned around to full council and said that the injunction isn't worth the paper it's written on. Which surprises me, because I actually know the judge that granted the injunction, so I'm sure they'll be surprised. So I would like to move 2 recommendations, Chair, based on the information we've heard today, to Cabinet. A, bearing in mind that the Police and Crime Commissioner is responding to the consultation, I think it's vitally important that our authority responds to this new consultation, which would give us some more armaments to deal with the illegal gypsy and traveller encampment. So I think we ought to move a recommendation to Cabinet that the relevant portfolio holder in consultation with the relevant director responds to that consultation, and a copy of that response be forwarded to all members. And also,
Can I just stop? Do you know if that's been definitely sent to all authorities, or is that just linked to you?
it's a national
It's a
consultation.
national consultation.
Okay.
It's a national consultation. And also to request Cabinet to reconsider applying for a county court injunction in the interim pending the High Court application. Because there is nothing stopping this authority getting that and then looking at the powers of the High Court.
I think your in-house lawyers are looking at it.
I know they are.
Yeah, but I don't think they've made an application yet.
They haven't made an application to the High Court. Last we were informed by legal officers. But as far as I'm concerned, Chair, we have a justice centre over there. All right, I work in there now. But I don't see why we should not use the powers that are there. If they want to try and test them, Chair, let them defend it and let the judge make a decision. But until such point, that injunction is lawful. And the police, if the power of arrest is attached to it, would be obligated to enforce that injunction. So I would move those two recommendations to Cabinet, Chair.
And the proof of the pudding will be if local authorities like Bedworth, Nuneaton, Bedworth, end up spending less on clearing up sites and moving people on, it could well pay for itself over and again, over and over again.
So you
I was going to say a second.
Okay. Right, so as you know, this is not a decision-making body, this is just recommendations. So all those in favour of those recommendations, please show your hands.
Is that,
You
is
do
that
both?
both?
You do both, do
It's just both of them. It's only it's a recommendation to Cabinet. Yeah, okay, so that's all. Okay. Councillor Nicole.
Thank you, Chair. Great to hear about some of the stuff you do on social media. You are starting to get more tweets out about some of the recent successes, and I'm sure lots of members retweet, so that's really good. You talk about your 700 officers being need to be up to 900. At the moment, the other hole is actually the 101 service is gradually, hopefully, been recovering a bit, but it's people having the confidence to call you because they've obviously been disappointed with 101 in the past. So I do hope, alongside having a better ability to respond, you can then actually work on the ability to take that information of people. It's not a 999 call, but they're seeing that van that looked suspiciously with electronic gadgets or whatever intelligence they've got. And also for the county lines and things, intelligence is really important on 101. So I do hope we're getting that fixed as quickly as possible. On the new homes, it's a major thing. We have it in my area, which has got a disproportionate amount of new homes. Burglaries in the first 6 months of people moving in, and a lot of it is tied in. Obviously, the burglars know that's where all the new kit is, the new cars, etc. And things like our ANPR and a lot of our stuff in our neighbourhood watch schemes actually don't catch up with where the new houses are. So we have a neighbourhood watch scheme that's formed too late for when the houses are built. So I hope a lot of the sort of preventative stuff, if you've got more officers, can we do more for the new homes, because they are a big target. And the final point I wanted to make, you quite rightly talk about harm in your annual report, but obviously there's things like people having their vans broken into, which massively affects their ability to continue as a plasterer or whatever. And that quite often, if they're calling that, it doesn't get much treatment because it's non-harm or you'll claim on insurance. And anecdotally, there has been a big issue in the last sort of year or so.
Well, let me pick up the 101 question. It's a good point, and it always raises any public meeting I go to. Firstly, on 999, and it's the same people who answer the phone in the control room. The 999, we're now, we get weekly stats on this, so they're quite up to date. We're at 96% of calls being answered within 10 seconds. Now that's one of the best in the country, so we've got to keep it there, but that's good news for those of you who need the police in an emergency. The 101 call has been around the 50, 60 out of time. It's a longer target, it's about 20 seconds, I think, isn't it, for 101. has been around 50-60%, which is absolutely not good enough. We have now put some pressure onto the forces, or onto the powers that run the control room, to recruit more people, to get better training, get people in. Ironically, because we've been recruiting officers, some of the control room staff have wanted to become full-time police constables. So it's a game where you're constantly training, getting new people in, and getting them. But the last stat I got, I think Dave will correct me if I was wrong, I think we're up to about 70% now. So we're going in the right direction. That control room gets over 42,000 calls a year. It's really busy. A lot of them come in on a Friday or a Saturday night when it's busy. So I'm trying to see if we can work out a system whereby people can report a suspect vehicle or a bit of intelligence, and a lot of people do help, residents help the police by reporting with eyes and ears, to try and see if we can do a bit more online. Not many forces do it. I'm told that the ones that do it, residents are not always good at filling out forms and giving evidence and everything, so the control room end up ringing them back again and spending longer doing that than they would have done to suspect them in the first place. But I often ring 101, I think, as a sort of mystery shopper. I normally get through within 10 seconds, but if I was ringing on a Friday night, it's going to take longer, or a particular big incident going on, a motorway smash, everybody's ringing and saying there's an accident, and the 999s are absolutely really busy, so they have to concentrate on those. So the 101s can get left of it. But I think it's right, it's efficient for the same people to be doing both, because they're not all going all the time. And we are putting pressure, I'm holding, if you like, the force to account to improve those figures to get them up to target. Do you want to talk about new houses?
Well, in terms of new houses, we always send out our designer crime officer, the DOCOs for short. We've got them in either side of the force. They usually link in very, very early with the builders in terms of, right, you're building these houses, this is what we suggest that you put in there for crime prevention. We also get told in the safer neighbourhoods teams when they're likely to start being built. So certainly my team have gone out to new developments and link in with the builders straight away. We speak to the site managers. So we're regularly visiting those areas whilst they're being built, because we're not stupid. We know they'll go for the boilers and everything else, and rip out half the kitchen as soon as they put in. So if I can give you some reassurance, certainly my team, I know that we do. I mean, when I was a sergeant, when the first one was being built on the A5 on the long shoot there, I was out there myself speaking to site foremen when they first laid the bricks. So we do a lot of work with these companies when they're ready to build.
And all the residents when they move in.
Yeah. But we do, the PCSO should be knocking doors, introducing themselves, speaking to the communities. And the one thing that the PCSOs in particular, along with their beat managers, is that we then link in with the neighbourhood watch, and we try and build those new neighbourhood watches across those estates. So we are doing that. But equally, if people don't want to join, there's not a lot we can do about that. And the only other thing I was going to say about, you mentioned vans, if I can give you some reassurance, I can tell you that there's a hell of a lot of work gone into target hardening people who own vans with businesses. We do a lot of van packs, and we do a lot of property marking as well. So a lot of work goes into trying to prevent further van offences.
Right, okay, thanks. That's 9 out of 12 speakers anyway, that's to me. I'd like to concentrate more locally, so you're saying you've got 790 out of potential 1,000 officers across Warwickshire. Could you tell me what Nuneaton and Bedworth have got as his officers, or does it not divide down that much?
I couldn't give the
You
figures.
couldn't give them. No, that's okay. I don't expect you to have figures off the top of your head. It's just that I know that there's been quite a few officers throughout Nuneaton and Bedworth leaving recently and not being replaced. And I'm just wondering if some of the criminals know this, and that's why they're targeting Nuneaton, especially with the recent break-in in one of the jewellers Saturday morning.
Yeah.
It's not news that we need to get out there. And I was just wondering if that, you know, could be one of the reasons why Nuneaton and Bedworth is being targeted, is because we are particularly low within Warwickshire. Can you come back to me on the figures on what we should have and where we are?
I'll give you a general. We have more officers than we had 2 years ago. We are on the way up. I don't think recently the force has been downgraded. I think the types of crime, the amount we now have to record and investigating has changed, and I think an individual officer has a bigger in-tray, if you like, work to be done, and they're under greater pressure. But I don't think that it's correct either to get a message out, or is it correct that Warwickshire Police is less effective than it was? As I said,
I wasn't saying that Warwickshire is
20% more efficiencies, as I told you, just because of the mobile phone.
Yeah.
So they're definitely more efficient and better equipped than they were.
So what I was saying, to make it clear, is I just wanted to concentrate on just Nuneaton and Bedworth. I wasn't saying that Warwickshire Police is any less effective. I just wanted to know the figures for Nuneaton and Bedworth.
Yeah. I mean, you have 2 major patrol bases, one in Bedworth, one in Nuneaton. I don't know, we can get the figures.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking.
What I can tell you, Chair, is certainly from a neighbourhood perspective, I know I'm right on establishment, I'm not under. So, you know,
As in numbers,
I did say in the last meeting, I remember, I think it was Councillor Hancock's made a comment about Bedworth being halved. I absolutely have no idea where that came from. But it's not true, and certainly from a neighbourhood position, I am certainly up to my strengths. I've got 1 or 2 gaps at PCSO level because, as Mr Seckham's alluded to, they've moved up to becoming police officers.
Yeah.
But, you know, we have to take into account as well that our officers, you know, some can be on courses, some can be sick, unfortunately, and they move around and change careers. But for me, being on the ground with my officers, we're not hearing that offenders know we've got lower numbers by any stretch of the imagination. And thankfully, those types of robberies that you talk about in jewellers, they are few and far between in Warwickshire.
Could have been much worse.
Yeah.
Obviously, because we're trying to do things with town centres as well, one of the things that is especially bad for either town centre is the beggars at the minute. And I'm constantly getting complaints of banks where they're camped out. What are we doing about moving these on, especially the people that we know are begging?
Yeah, I think you'll find it has improved. That's the first thing. Yeah, we can't just rock up and move them. That's the first thing, Chair. We can't do that.
I understand you can't if they're on the highway.
Yeah.
But what if they're in the doorway?
No, we can't just. We haven't got the powers, the police powers, to just say you will move. We just can't do that. There is a step process for us. So what we've been doing as a team, my team, we've been giving community protection warnings to them first. We then have to follow that up with a written community protection notice warning. And then we're taking them to court. So we've currently got 3 of those beggars that have been to court, one of which we're trying to get a community behavioural order against, which is like the old style CRASBO, criminal behavioural order. And then quite a few, my understanding is, we spoke about them in a meeting in this very room this afternoon, is quite a few of them have moved on. So yeah, we know we've got a flickering of a few still in the town.
Yeah.
But certainly one of my PCs, Andy Morrissey, he owns the problem at the moment. I think we've been working closely with yourself.
He does.
So yeah, it is a step process, and I accept that, you know, members of the public are going to be thinking, why are the police getting rid of these? We do have to follow a process. If we're going to try and get these individuals into court.
Well, is your process being held up by the courts?
No, not to be fair. That's just the legislation that we have to use. Notwithstanding, we will go up to a homeless person stroke beggar and say, move. But the minute we turn our back, they're usually back there. We don't have any powers to do anything about that. We have to follow a protocol, and we've been doing that for the best part of about 6 months. But some of those homeless people aren't homeless.
No.
Unfortunately, some of them are council tenants. And in fairness to the council, they've looked into, right, okay, am I going to breach your tenancy? However, they're not, because there's a certain distance. If they live far enough away from this town centre, they won't get breached for their tenancy. So again, a little bit hamstrung there.
Yeah, I do know.
Can I just say, a lot of work's been going on in Stratford, and I was at a meeting earlier this week. not all beggars are homeless,
No, no.
and not all homeless people are beggars. So there's a difference between them. What they're doing in Stratford Town Centre is they're promoting a scheme persuading people not to give money to beggars, but to put money into a pot that will be used to help house those that are homeless. Now that's a good scheme, and it's reckoned that on Stratford you can earn about £100 a day tax-free begging. Good money if you can do it. And it's substantially reduced. Maybe that's something money can look at.
My chosen charity this year is Doorway. I was 16 to 20, so I always encourage people not to give to beggars.
Brilliant.
So,
We've been doing the same, Chair, as you know, again through social media, we put those messages out as well.
yeah. On the new homes, when we had King's View built, for instance, I found it important to work with the developers.
Yeah.
So as a councillor, I worked with the developers. We had different things put in the packs. It's always good to work with the developer instead of against them. Years ago, back in Sergeant Rimmel's day, or wherever it is,
Rymel,
I suggested that perhaps they...
Ronald was a general.
He was a big guy.
He was, wasn't he?
Well, anyway, I suggested that we perhaps look at putting a police logo on the library things, and so that people could go in, press the logo, and report crimes that way.
Mm-hmm.
Did anything ever happen with that, or is
It
that
did,
something we could look at?
Right, I'll give you an example. If you recall when Bedworth Police Station shut the front office there, people signposted across the road into the council premises there.
Right.
That worked quite well for a number of years, and we had that all over Warwickshire. However, it's fair to say that once we got into that alliance, that was just defunct.
Right, is there any way we could look at something like that again, and then perhaps, if it is still up and running, we could perhaps put it on our computers downstairs as well.
It's not up and running in now. It certainly hasn't. Certainly while we've been in the alliance, it hasn't been up and running.
I think it's something we could look at. Anything to help residents report crime or get advice or assistance
That's
to
all
the victim is a good thing.
Is there anything, and you know, if you go into a library or into the council computers and you see a police logo on, and that's a way to report something or even suspect something, it might get some leads.
I mean, it's working in some parts of Warwickshire. I was at Southern Library the other day. There's an SNT team there. They're very much working with the local authority and the county council, and it works pretty well.
And my last one, and then I've got one more, and then we'll move on, is Erin Court. You have nothing to do with that at all now in the town centre, do you? The old courts.
I don't know it.
No.
What is it?
Well, it's just right with the old courts. It's just
the courts?
Yeah.
Don't own the Nuneaton ones. I own the Stratford and the Rugby ones.
Heron House was rented from the actual people who owned.
It's just I was under the impression that the courts were still paying for it. That's what's never been rented out again.
No. We're tight
I'd
lines.
like that looked at. Councillor Rudkin.
Yeah, it's just going back to what you were discussing before about, I'm sat in 2 neighbourhood watch meetings in Bedworth concerning, and it has been said on both occasions about the SNT, and the words they used was decimated.
Yeah, no, Lynn Price is one of them. I spoke to Lynn.
Yeah, well the actual officer said it.
Yeah, well,
It was said twice, and if obviously residents of Bedworth are listening to that,
Yeah, yeah.
and if you're saying that's not the case,
No, wasn't the case. I don't know why the officer said it, and that officer was spoken to. I'd just be honest with why it was said. Because what I basically had was I had a couple of officers who were sick. I had one that went on maternity leave, which I can't do anything about. And then I allowed one to transfer, a PCSO to transfer to Rugby. But I then sent one of my PCSOs from Nuneaton just to backfill that.
right.
So no, to say it was decimated, I heard figures of 50%.
Yeah, it's from 7 down to 4, we were told.
Yeah, nonsense. It just wasn't true. Don't know why the officer said that. And I spoke to Lynn Price, who went on really well. And obviously I was told, well, I followed on from what the officer said. So yeah, no, that's not the case. And Bedworth's back to nearly where it is. Obviously the female PCSO is still on maternity leave, but other than that, we are where we should be. And in fact, we're hoping with the increase, we'll have another PC there in due course.
Just to say that I mentioned it, we're increasing the number of officers. We're also slightly increasing the number of PCSOs, and there are training courses booked in for PCSOs to be trained as well as officers. So it's absolutely the intention to at least keep safe and neat teams as they are to establishment, and then as we go forward we want to increase them, not decrease them.
Just another point there, and I've said this before, is that I appreciate, you know, certainly as councillors and local communities, they say, right, I've got this many officers on Safe and Neighbourhoods team at Bedworth, of which there are 2 PCs there, and that's been the case for about 6-7 years now. I should make the point that I regularly send my police officers from Nuneaton as well to Bedworth. I'll give you an instance. We ran an operation a few weeks ago because we had a large number of youths who were causing problems at Tesco's, then going on to the Civic Hall, causing problems at the Scrutiny there, and then going to a particular area of Bedworth called the Mews. We put an operation on, once we knew that was happening, within a few days I had probably 6-7 officers tackling that, and we had a real good success with it. And then, so those officers have spent one night in Bedworth, and then they returned back to Nuneaton. So my sergeant will use the Nuneaton SNT resources to support our Bedworth team. So we are one big team. So I appreciate, in terms of who your beat managers are, I will use all my resources if I've got a problem in Bedworth. But likewise, if I've got a serious problem in Nuneaton, I will pull my Bedworth resources over to Nuneaton. So, we go where the greatest need is.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So it's just from me is if you could just forward the figures for Nuneaton and Bedworth where we was or where we should be and where we are. And
the other thing you asked us to do is can we get tippers to send the link to the Home Office survey on Gypsy Travellers that's just come out what do we send it to your democratic services that you can circulate it?
Yeah, okay. Right, thank you. You're more on the department now.
Well, if I just say thanks very much for listening. I regard you, like me, as a community leader. If you hear of anything that I ought to be aware of, or you want me to come listen to some of your residents or your communities, I'm happy to do that. I'm quite busy, but I go to all sorts. We've got over 300 parish councils. I haven't been to all of them, but I've been to quite a lot of them in Warwickshire. So my job is about engaging, it's about listening actually, not talking. So I found it very useful tonight to hear what you all have to say, and I look forward to being invited back, not necessarily next month, but in the future.
No, thank you for coming. Thanks. Right, cheers. Right, next one then is the Health and Wellbeing Board Annual Report. You'll see you've got a copy of it for you. Unfortunately, the officer that was going to present this is a slideshow, but she's phoned in today. She's actually sick. So what I'm going to suggest is take this slideshow home and look through it. If you've got any questions at all, and then email them through to Wendy, and then we'll get any answers to you. This is where it's going to be, really, with when officers are sick. It's just unfortunate, but she's sick. So if I could ask you to take this away, take a look at it. I mean, if there's loads and loads of issues, and then we'll have to perhaps set another meeting for it, but if you could take that away. Then takes us on to JSNA, which again is Rachel again. So Rachel Robinson. So again, to me, JSNA is an important piece of work that we need to look at. So again, you can take this away, have a look at it, and send them through any questions that you need to Wendy. And if we do all feel that for them 2 items we need a meeting, and then that's how it has to be. It's not that there's a problem. It's not that there's a problem for us, but it won't be a problem for the officer. So, them two things are out of our control, really. Councillor Concourt.
Yeah, I did ask about the JSNA from the County Council, and the Nuneaton Central one is just at the point of being finished, and they're going to email it to me, so it might be worth, if councillors are wanting to see what's in the JSNA for the Nuneaton Central, that actually we look at that as well.
Yeah, okay. Right. Number 9, item 9.
Okay, the two items on here for me, I think. Firstly was an update around the Nuneaton Business Improvement District. Back in July last year, the Nuneaton Business Alliance, who were the Business Improvement District proposer, was successful in their application for funding to take proposal for Business Improvement District through to the next stage, which is effectively the foundation stages of the Business Improvement District. So they have an application worth £46,000 to help them deliver that. They were a little bit slow off the mark initially in terms of getting started, but just prior to Christmas they had their first major meeting for the business community of Nuneaton. Letters were sent out to all of the businesses, and they were invited to attend a meeting over at the United Reformed Church, where they would find out more about what a business improvement district was and what it could ultimately deliver. There were 23 people attended the meeting on that evening, 16 of which later expressed an interest in contributing to the development of the bid by being part of the steering group, which will ultimately take the bid forward through the foundation stages. So, following that, the first meeting of effectively the steering group was held on Tuesday the 29th of January, really to look at what they wanted to do in terms of their meetings and how often they wanted to meet and what were the key sort of priorities. One of the key priorities for them really is to look at employing the services of a consultancy to help take them through the foundation stages. The formation stages. There's a lot of consultancy work that needs to be done with the businesses, with partners as well, including ourselves as the local authority. We do have, there are some requirements that we have to provide in terms of information. It will also, if the bid is successful in going through, there will be a financial implication to us as well in terms of us making contribution towards the bid on the properties that we own within the area of benefit. So really at this point, it's getting a consultant on board that can direct them and support them with some of the legwork as well. I have actually been set up 2 business improvement districts myself, one in Hinckley and one in Loughborough. So obviously I'm happy to support them where I can in terms of guiding them through the process as well. Realistically, you're looking at sort of an 18-month programme. Certainly the initial scoping exercise was that they're looking at this being developed by August 2022, I think it is. Yes, that's not correct, is it? It's going to be August 2021 is the date that they've got in terms of the business improvement district potentially going live. It's a very, like I say, detailed sort of process in terms of getting that up and running. There's baseline agreements that have to be completed here with ourselves, with highways, with the police, with other stakeholders that have contributions in relation to the operation of the town centre or area of benefit as well. And then there's the formal ballot process itself to go through, and there's some legal requirements in relation to how that functions. They have to pull together a formal business plan or proposal that has to go out to all of the businesses who within the area of benefit, and that has to go within a certain timeline for them to consider whether they're going to vote yes or no for its implementation. And then ultimately they've got to form the delivery and legalities around the business improvement district as well, and how that will ultimately operate if it is successful. So there is, like I say, a lot of work for them to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, Councillor Elliott.
Thanks. I just wanted clarification on the date of August 2020, because you said 18 months.
Yeah, that should be August 2021 is the timescales within the. They put forward the initial proposal for the application, and they've had to outline the full timelines of that. There was some toing and froing in relation to that, but it is effectively an 18-month period from. Effectively, it's almost 2 years from July when the application was done, so it's now 18 months. It will be August 2021.
Councillor Concord.
Very disappointed about the number of people who attended.
Yeah.
In terms of the database of who you sent the letters to,
Yes.
is it the people who pay the council tax, the business rates at head office? Is it the local shop manager you've written or emailed to, or both? And secondly, I'm still confused about the 18 months, because 18 months would take us somewhere near the end of 2020, not 2021.
2020. It's effectively, like I say, I can get the timelines that they submitted for their original study, and I'll confirm the dates exactly to you, or if I get that sent out, it's probably best I go back to their original submission and just confirm that. In terms of how the information was sent out, the group is made up obviously of local businesses, and they provided individuals, they actually allocated up streets between themselves in terms of handing out a letter of invitation to the businesses on the ground. So they would have gone at this point to the individual stores, potentially to the top shop managers or to the personnel that were there at the time. Once the bid actually gets up and running, one of the first things it needs to do is gather the information from the business rates team, cleanse that information to make sure it's correct, which will then provide them with information relating to not only the leaseholder, but also the property owners as well. So at this point, like I say, it's then going out without that information and doing it. And if a steering group is going to be effective, all of the members within that really have to get involved, and I've seen it done before where the bids do break it up into areas. If a business is based in that particular street, then they go out and they speak to the people in that individual street as well. It's always difficult to get out there. The average turnout of a bid is around sort of 40%. So it's, for the ballot purposes, it's a challenge that they have to work out in terms of how they're going to communicate sort of moving forward.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Should I just ask, is the Nuneaton Arts Council considered to be a stakeholder in this?
Where is it?
They run the Abbey Theatre.
The Abbey Theatre, well, this is up to, again, the steering group to clearly define. Originally, when they went to the Association of Town Centre Managers for a feasibility study, and they came back with a couple of options in terms of what the area of benefit could be, the size of that area of benefit, and then obviously the percentage of the rateable value that they charge as a levy will impact upon how much funds this group will have to move forward and deliver the projects it wants to do. So it's up to this group, by speaking to some of the key stakeholders and people as well, to decide where their boundary wants to be, whether they want to use the ring road, whether they want to go slightly further. That's not a decision for us to make, it's a decision for them to make.
The reason I'm asking is I'm aware that this council and Warwickshire County Council both contributed funding to a similar scoping exercise and study for the Arts Council to move their theatre inside the ring road. And it would be sensible, it would seem, to utilise the information that's already been paid for in one study that will benefit this, because obviously they're looking at the leisure and evening economy aspect of things.
Well, again, they also need to decide what type of bid it can be. You know, there are some bids that are purely retail.
Yeah.
There are some that are all encompassing in terms of the whole, you know, sort of business community or commercial element of it. There are some that are leisure-based or whatever. So again, it's really, I would say my feeling is that they'll go for an all-encompassing bid, and ultimately if there's a commercial levy on the premises, then that business will be included, provided, again, they can set effectively rates at which they don't pay below a certain level, or they don't, or cap it at a certain rate, or they can even put it on shopping centres saying, well, they already pay a service charge, they might pay a smaller rate. So there are a multitude of things that they've got to decide, and this is really why the process takes that period of time really to go through and get right.
So we've had little to do in this at the minute, just now to...
Well, I go to the meetings there, and
I'm just trying to get the fact that as somebody who's done 2 of these before, you've got experience in shaping it, and you can help them. As a council, we've given money to something which duplicates what we're now trying to do. So it makes sense to try and shape it to utilise the information we've already paid for.
Yeah, and you know, all the information that is available to us should be provided, obviously, to them to help them to guide it what it is. But the important thing is, you know, this is business led, and they've got to be making those decisions on what is right and what is important for them.
Yeah, it's just that if we then give go ahead to a new theatre in the town, which could cut across something the bid has decided to do, so it seems prudent that we utilise that and try and shape it if we can.
I think probably a long way off that yet, but I'll see what I mean. Councillor Longden.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for being late. Georgia Hospital rang me just to put the coat on. The way the health services and my health is at the moment, I have to take that call. And then when Councillor Elliott texted me, I've been sat on the Cockadare Bridge for at least 10 minutes, and it was just one car at a time. Horrible out there.
Okay.
Of the 277, Jonathan, that didn't respond, is there any feedback from them why they didn't respond? Were they not interested? Is it wrong time, wrong date, wrong place, whatever?
Well,
and then of the 7 that were missing from, or didn't go forward from the meeting to the steering group, was there any feedback from them why?
Well, I think in relation to that, one of the things there was, in terms of those that spoke at the meeting, we invited the bid manager down from Stratford-upon-Avon to really sort of talk through and explain, you know, the kind of things that a business improvement district could deliver. And one of the things that was stressed as well is that if they wanted to put their names forward for the steering group, that there would be, you know, it would take their time. They would be volunteering their time to support this, so it would mean attending meetings, certainly as things progressed as well, if they decided to divide the town up in terms of how they would engage with the business community. It would be their time invested there and going out and talking to people and what have you. So I think that element of it, you know, put some people off in terms of not being able to offer their time while they were happy to support it. And certainly I don't think anybody from the meeting, as I saw it anyway, went away with a negative view on the development of the business improvement district. But in terms of why more people didn't attend, it's very, very, you know, very difficult to say. The feedback from those that went out and handed out was that, you know, some people couldn't attend for whatever reason. Some people weren't interested in the scheme, and, you know, it was very much a mixed bag as you would expect. I think my experience of this again is once you start to see more information going out from the steering group in terms of, one, the consultation and engagement, and two, certainly as you get towards the ballot and the proposal, then that's when you tend to see a lot more engagement as well from the business community.
Anything else? Well, what I can only see would be it's a good thing, to be honest. I'm probably looking through it through rose-tinted glasses, because all I'm doing is opening businesses up just like this. So things are looking good from where I see it, so it's going to be difficult as well for or the Alliance to keep in touch with all the businesses that are constantly opening up and closing down equally as they are. But well, just wish them every luck in it, and hope it starts moving. Yes, so as in coming back to this panel, you don't really need to come back.
Well, I do. I need to confirm the dates in terms of the time. Yeah,
I mean, actually coming back.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah.
Coming back here for at least another 12 months, when perhaps got something to report. Everybody happy with that? Nobody against? Okay. Thank you. Right, you again?
Yeah, the next one was around the town teams in Bedworth and the feasibility of forming a town team in Bedworth. A town team is, I mean, there are a number of bodies that can be formed really to bring together the business community. The town team is really sort of the starting point. I think where we had the Business Alliance in Nuneaton that had been established for a while, our constituted body and Careful could apply for its status and what have you and take that forward. In Bedworth, at this moment in time, there was very little in terms of groups of businesses and certainly not constituted or formed that could actually take and support really a sort of partnership type approach. So a town team really is the starting block, I guess, for pulling together some dialogue and partnership working for Bedworth Town Centre. So that would involve elements of the community, really needs to be business-led. It is obviously on a voluntary basis, and it can help, you know, the sort of shape their vision for Bedworth Town Centre. One of the things that we are doing is that we are looking to engage consultants to provide a visioning exercise for Bedworth Town Centre for us. I think obviously a lot of work now has been done in relation to transforming Nuneaton, and what we need to do is start looking at the vision as well for Bedworth Town Centre. And again, I think if we've got this document with us, then that will help in terms of the engagement with the businesses to give them that prompt initially that we've got some idea of where we want to go and give us the opportunity to engage. As I understand it, it has been difficult in both town centres to get a consistent level of engagement with the business community in the past, but we hope to obviously try and change that so that we've got engagement with both business communities in Nuneaton and Bedworth.
Any questions on town team? Yes,
Again, you may be well aware of this already, but the local MP's already got business breakfasts started, networking in the town.
Yes.
It's a fledgling thing so far, but are you intending to liaise in that area as well? Because somebody's already doing the work and you don't want to reinvent the wheel.
No, I'm more than happy if there were groups starting to sprout up, that obviously we can be involved in that and have representation.
It would just make sense to piggyback onto something that's already happening.
It's that initial starting, you know, getting the groups with somebody. If there's a group there, then it makes sense to take that on board and move it forward.
Thank you.
One quick question, is the market area involved in this as well, and street pastors, those sort of things?
In terms of?
In terms of the town team?
Yes, well, I mean, like I say, you know, it can involve any elements of the community. In terms of the market itself there, we've done a restructure to have a member of staff permanently now at Bedworth Market, so that whereas before the staff there were transiting between the two sites, they will now be focusing on Bedworth Market to drive that forward and doing a level of engagement with the businesses within the town centre as well. So it makes sense obviously to get them involved in anything that's going forward. And certainly where I've been involved with town teams and partnership style things as well, then street pastors have been involved in those in the past as well. So again, it would make sense to make contact and get them involved.
You said that the working party you wanted would be business-led. This was when I was doing my, what do you call it, counselling, you know, to become elected, time and time again, the householders were saying about Bedworth Town Centre, what are you going to do, what's happening, blah, blah, blah. You want it to be business-led, but surely, you know, you need public involvement as well.
Yeah, I think within there it does say about getting the community and residents involved in this. Some of the, for example, the business improvement district model, and this is where I said that we need to perhaps take a different approach at this time with each town. Whereas the bid will not have direct sort of residential representation, if you like. It will have some people from the voluntary sector. A town team can have that. It can have people representing local residents because it's, you know, initially it's an informal sort of forum or what have you. Why I think it needs to be business-led ultimately is what we're talking about. The core density there is the business community. That's what is important, and really they should be given the opportunity to shape their trading environment, sort of taking that forward. But it does them good to understand what their public wants as well in the long term. So the combination of the two would work with the town team approach.
I understand that, but you know, the public do have some excellent ideas about, you know, how they want to see their town being shaped, and I'm sort of worried that it would be so business-led that the actual townsfolk won't have a say. You know, for instance, last year I did try and get a meeting with you, but you were very difficult to get, and that was one of the first things that I did when I became elected, was start to talk about, you know, Bedworth Town Centre, and here we are sort of nearly a year later, and suddenly, oh, let's get a business-led town team together for Bedworth, and I'm just very concerned that the people that elected me are going to be left out of the decision making.
Yeah, I completely understand it, and with town centres at the moment, they are going through a huge area of transition, and people do want to know what's going on with them and where we're going to be, and which is why ultimately what we need is a clear vision for all of our town centres as to where we want they be and what they can be. You know, there's a lot of work going on here in Nuneaton in relation to the transforming Nuneaton, which is now putting together a clear vision. Where we are in terms of Bedworth in that, we're at a lower level and we need to start that. And the residents have an important element to play in that, but equally as well, from my point of view, I think there's an element of, I don't want to sound derogatory, not education, but in informing people what the situation is around town centres at the moment, because there's always this preconception of, you know, we get Marks and Spencer's back, we'll do this and what have you, which in reality is not there. So it certainly would be beneficial for me as well, and there's no reason that, again, we can't do that in terms of the representation for the town team, but I still think there has got to be a strong business core to this with them ultimately near it, because they can't survive without the residents, but they are the people who are actually there paying the business rates and actually trading within there, because it is a commercial centre.
Councillor Brown, did you indicate again?
Yeah, I did, Chair, but the point's been answered. Thank you.
Councillor Longley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not opposed to resident involvement at all. I've been through lots of things in the past. The problem is sometimes that residents turn up with a wish list, and the only people who can deliver that wish list are the business sector, and if they don't want to do it or can't do it, probably can't do it more than don't want to do it, then people tend to get a bit frustrated and say they're not listening and all the rest of it. So we had people's juries many years ago and things like that. And that's what tended to happen, and that's why they broke up. So the issue is not one of not wanting to do it. The issue is that people have to be realistic And if we put up a wish list and it can't be delivered, then they have to accept the reasoning why it can't be delivered, because the business sector don't want to do it or can't do it, and they haven't got the wherewithal to do it. So there has to be some levels of understanding there when these things are going ahead, because it's not good, it's just not good enough to put up a wish list and walk away and say get on with that and do that, because it won't happen that way.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I really do welcome the report, actually, because I remember 7 or 8 years ago now when we were looking at the Portus pilots going on, and there was an opportunity there for us. This council insisted we must do it as Nuneaton and Bedworth. Now, we are united as one borough, but our town centres are completely different. They have different attributes, both really good attributes, some not so good, which we're trying to work out. But you cannot impose a Nuneaton solution on Bedworth and vice versa. It just doesn't work. And for too long, this council has had this view, we must do everything equally together, Nuneaton and Bedworth, whether or not it actually works for them or not. And I'm really pleased to see now we have finally, touch wood, learnt the lesson that actually sometimes you have to let Bedworth go free, and sometimes you have to let Nuneaton go free to actually get some prosperity and working moving forward. I am sure there are plenty of things in Nuneaton that residents in Bedworth would not like done to their town centre, and vice versa, because they have different communities, different histories, different makeups of what they used to be, and I think it's really important that we actually finally recognise that. Bedworth is never going to be Nuneaton town centre, nor should it be, nor should it want to be. It should be Bedworth town centre. And I think if this is a way to get that moving and actually start to recognise that the community wants something different, I think there is a balance to be struck between the community and business, but it is absolutely right, you will not get what the residents want unless business can deliver it. If we can start to get that moving, it's a really positive message. And of course Bedworth is going to be a bit further behind because there has been this transforming the Nuneaton agenda moving forward. But I'm pleased to see, and having had briefings with officers, that there is a recognition that Bedworth now needs to be brought on board too, and that, as I understand it, there is now going to be some kind of feasibility study done around the whole issue of Bedworth, with a view to applying to the Future High Streets Fund in the second tranche, with Nuneaton, because it's got transforming Nuneaton, almost a ready-made thing it can take off the shelf to put forward. Great. And then we can look at Bedworth and say, right, what does Bedworth need? Let's get it right and put forward a separate bid for Bedworth.
Yes.
And I think that is the right way to go. Finally, after years of I have to say it, the former leader, I think, actually insisting on his vision, which was outdated and it's not fit for the 21st century. I think this is.
Yeah, the plan is to do just that, really, to submit the initial proposal an application through for the Future High Street funding this year for Nuneaton, because we have got the groundwork done, and obviously in terms of there are quite a few elements that we can bring into that to put forward a strong application, whereas Bedworth, again, to submit one at this moment in time without some groundwork being done and some data available to us, I think would be a mistake. We should really be in a position where we can do justice to an application. And obviously we have the opportunity then as well to have time to consult with the relevant stakeholders to make sure that it's acceptable to all going forward.
Okay.
I fully support what's been said. I think this is fantastic for Bedworth, and this is exactly what we should be doing, and I fully support what's said about business and community involved. As a Bedworth councillor, especially with the Down Centre, I've contacted many times throughout even a week or a month about Bedworth Town Centre, what we're doing, so this is great. Is there any sort of timescale on plans moving forward for Bedworth?
We're looking, I'm doing this jointly with Warwickshire County Council in terms of the visioning document. We're hoping to get the brief done before the end of this financial year and submitted and out, and then obviously we'll, as part of that brief, we've got an outline brief already, we just need to put some timelines in terms of that. So at this moment in time, I can't say for certain, but I would suggest that if we're looking at appointing somebody sort of around sort of April, May time, then there should be no reason why this time next year we shouldn't have some kind of report to hand, if not before. Which, like I say, what we want to be in a position to do is to support the second round of the Future High Streets Fund, which is due about this time next year anyway, so that will be our target.
Okay. Right, so let's sort of finish off. So the feasibility study, there was money that was available for the Nuneaton Town Centre at the start of the bid. That was put on offer at the same time for Bedworth. Has anybody took that up?
No, I mean, that is
about £2.5 grand. I think
for more time.
it could be, I don't know, it's just get all from it, to be honest with you. But I know there was some money there put available for Bedworth stock to start of the bid, and as far as I know, that hasn't been taken up, so just a bit just to let people know that still hasn't been taken up by any business groups in Bedworth, or a group of businesses in Bedworth. Yeah, good to see here. Do something and do things, but with the public, the businesses will soon know, because they'll vote with their feet. So if they didn't put the right businesses in there, they'll soon be closing down, trust me. And that's the way public work. So.
Maybe I didn't get myself.
Yeah, no.
I understand about it being business led, but I was just saying about
the businesses will. Well, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what Jordan's trying to say is this is up to the businesses to make the town centre work. So this is if businesses don't get the town centre right, they'll know, because the public will be there. Yeah. For too long, we've tried to tell people that if they're doing some entertainment in Nuneaton, then they've got to go to Bedworth and do the same entertainment. And the entertainers have turned around to us and said, no, we don't want to do that. So we can't, whereas we can't tell entertainers where to entertain, we can't tell shops where to go either. So the public will have a massive say in it. So I don't think we need to worry about the public being left out. Like I say, good to see, but don't think we need to see this back for until you've got something to report, really.
Well, yeah, no, we've got to submit the applications for Nuneaton for the High Street. The bid, really, they've got to employ a consultant and then sort of move it
Massive job.
So.
Massive job, definitely. But until there's something to report and for us to look at, really, and perhaps...
Well, obviously we can come back with any documentation we have in relation to Bedworth and the vision and document from there when we've got that.
But, we all have different ideas of visions, don't we? I've got my own ideas, but there you go. But yeah, thank you very much, Jonathan. So now you can escape, then. You can run. Right, so that's all done. On to the next one, which is the forward plan, page 51. I know this is a bit strange on Boykes here, but it was agreed by a group of Scrutiny members that this comes to everybody to have a look at. It's just really to make sure that everybody is aware of what is on the forward plan, and so that you're aware and can attend and chip in on anything, really. So that's really for information, because I know a lot of people don't see it because it's on the link. Then that's going to bring us to the next one, which is the work programme on page 54. I'm going to bring it on to my favourite, So on page 54, on the programme, is everybody happy with how that programme is set out? Or is there anything anybody would like moved or whatever? Councillor Conical.
Can we, if we want, put the JSNA back on for
Well,
April.
I thought I said that if we get enough emails through that says the one JSNA and the other report to come back, then we'll set up another meeting for that. So we'll see how the emails go to Wendy. But what's on the programme, is everybody happy with what? So it's the next meeting really, which that sees it off, doesn't it?
I think so.
And then our job here will be done for the year. Everybody happy? It should all be doable. It'll be tight, but it is doable. Right, okay. And then comes on to the last one, which is gambling. I can't remember what it was the last time, so sorry I can't do that. But we asked for a working group to be put up, and so far we've only got 2 members that have showed any interest in that. Although there was a lot of conversation around it last time, there was nobody that actually showed interest in setting up a working group. Can't really do anything with this now until there is a working group looking at different things. I think it's a bit sad that we all, well, just about everybody that was here, noticed that there's a problem, noticed that we need to do something, and when we even looked at that, we found out that we'd never done any work into it to find out if we actually have got a problem or if we haven't got a problem, and yet it's a national problem. So again, don't decide tonight, but have a think about it, and if you want to be part of a working group, let Wendy know, because we need to get that set up as soon as possible. It's going to be a big one, because it's going to be looking at mental health, suicides, you name it. It's all going to be in there. So it will be a big one, and I just hope that people that come to it, if we do get enough, showing interest in it. So that's the end of that, really. And then that brings us to end, doesn't it? Any other items? Has anybody got any other items? No? Okay. Thank you very much for attending, and I'll say to you.